Experimental and theoretical probability is what we're going to be talking about today. So these are two different types of probabilities that exist. So far in class, really, we've been talking about theoretical. So theoretical probability is what is expected. That's our keyword, what is expected to happen based on the possible outcomes, assuming equally likely events. So that means each possible outcome is just as likely to occur as the other. So examples of theoretical probability is that when we flip a coin, there's a 50% chance of heads or tails. Another really common one is when you're having a baby, you have a 50% chance of boy or girl. In theory. Because in theory, there's two genders. You are a male or a female. In theory, there's only head or tail. But in practice, we realize there's a lot more options than this, and there's a lot more possibilities than just these two. Even in heads and tails, technically, I guess a coin could land straight up vertically on its side. So that's when we start talking about experimental probability, and that's the result of what actually happens after a large number of times, and that's what's really important. It's not just flipping a coin 5 times. It's a large number of times what's happening in practice. So let's go over some examples keeping these two differences in mind. So Jackson's flipping a coin 100 times. We have that large number. Keeps track of his results. Overall, there was 55 heads and 45 tails, which makes sense. The likelihood of only doing 100 trials and getting 50 and 50, not very likely. So our experimental probability of heads is going to be 55 out of 100. We always reduce that. So I could divide them both by 5, say. So 55 divided by 5 is 11. 100 divided by 5 is 20. Or I could write that as a decimal, which is 0.55. Tails is 45 out of 100. 45 divided by 5 is 9 out of 20, which reduces again to 0.45. But in theory, we have a half chance of getting heads or tails, or 0.5, half chance of tails, or 0.5. Very big difference between those two numbers. If we flipped our coins, let's say 1,000 times, or 10,000 times, we would get closer and closer to that 50%. So this next example, I'm looking at a spinner, and we're spinning it 40 times, and we got these results. So again, let's go through our experimental and our theoretical probabilities. I would like you to actually try this on your own. So literally pause the video, complete these answers, and then see if your answers compare with mine. So as you can see, my results here, theoretical probabilities and experimental, have a few differences, mainly in the red and blue. My green and yellow happen to work out okay. And that's just what it's going to be, 40 times, not a huge amount. So you can see there's a difference between experimental and theoretical probabilities.